The moment. Michael Jordan. Almost gave up. He locked the door, told the staff to leave, told his teammates not to call. And for the next several hours, Michael Jordan, the most competitive human being the sport of basketball had ever produced, sat alone and thought about walking away. Not from a slump, not from an injury, from himself. We have spent decades building the legend of Michael Jordan, and we did it so well that we forgot something important. We forgot that behind every myth is a moment the myth almost didn't survive. We know about the cuts, the losses, the failures. We've heard the speeches about using pain as fuel. We've watched the documentaries, we've read the books. But there is a chapter in Michael Jordan's psychology, not his career. His psychology that has never been fully opened. Because the most dangerous opponent Michael Jordan ever faced didn't wear a jersey. It didn't play defense. It didn't trash talk. It lived inside him. And for a period of time that the world has largely looked past, it was winning. To understand what broke Michael Jordan, you first have to understand what built him. Not the talent. Talent was the easy part. What built Michael Jordan was something darker. Something most people would recognize in themselves if they were honest enough to look. Fear. Not fear of losing. Fear of being ordinary. From the moment he entered the league in 1984, Jordan was operating on a different psychological frequency than everyone around him. While other players feared failure, Jordan had engineered failure into fuel so efficiently that he no longer feared it the way normal competitors do. He needed it. He manufactured it. Former teammates have described a man who would invent slights, create enemies where there were none, build psychological kindling out of thin air, just so he could light it. Sports psychologists call this kind of internal wiring a hyper-competitive identity structure, meaning you don't just play the game, you become it. Your sense of self, your worth, your safety, your reason for existing becomes fused with the scoreboard, and for a long time, that fusion made Michael Jordan unstoppable. Until it didn't. August 3rd, 1993. James Jordan, Michael's father, was murdered while sleeping in his car in North Carolina. We will not rush past this, because this is where the story that the world saw and the story that was actually happening inside Michael Jordan began to separate. The public narrative said Michael Jordan retired because he wanted to play baseball, because he loved the game his father loved, a tribute, a beautiful choice. That story is true, but it is not the whole truth. What the cameras didn't capture, what press conferences couldn't contain, was a man who no longer recognized himself without basketball. For the first time in his adult life, Jordan had stepped off the court voluntarily and discovered something terrifying. Without the game, without the competition, without the scoreboard to tell him he was winning, who was he? That question, for a man whose entire identity had been fused to greatness, was not philosophical. It was paralyzing. And here is where the story gets complicated. Here is where we have to slow down and sit with something uncomfortable. Michael Jordan's baseball career is often remembered as a romantic detour. What it actually was a man in crisis trying to find a new scoreboard because his old one had collapsed. And he couldn't find it. But there was a moment, one specific moment, that the people closest to him still don't fully talk about. Stay with me. The numbers were bad. By the standards of Michael Jordan's life, they were devastating. Not because a .202 batting average is shameful for someone learning the sport, but because Michael Jordan had never, not once in his competitive life, been mediocre at anything he chose to pursue. And the psychological weight of that, of choosing something and failing to dominate it, began doing something to him that no defender, no press, no 6-game losing streak had ever done. It made him doubt the thing underneath the talent. Not his jump shot, not his footwork, his identity. And this is where it gets quiet, because the version of Michael Jordan that existed during those months wasn't the version anyone had ever been prepared for. quieter, withdrawn, asking questions he had never asked before. Questions like, what if the greatness was just basketball? What if, without the game, I'm just a person? That question sounds simple. It is not simple. For someone who has built every wall of their psychological house on the foundation of being the best, the possibility that the foundation was the game, and not the man, is not a question. It is a demolition. And so he sat with it, alone, in a way that greatness almost never allows itself to be. He wasn't in that place because he was dramatic. He wasn't there because he was falling apart. He was there because he was doing the most terrifying thing a man built like Michael Jordan could possibly do. He was meeting himself. For the first time. Without a jersey on. On March 18th, 1995, Michael Jordan issued the two most famous words of his second act. I'm back. 2 words. 11 months after stepping away from basketball. The world read it as confidence, as inevitability, as Michael Jordan reminding the universe who he was. And it was all of those things, but it was also something else. It was an answer. The answer to the question the silence had asked him, because somewhere in those months, between the baseball diamonds and the quiet locker rooms and the long, unscheduled nights, Michael Jordan had arrived at something that could not be manufactured, could not be won, could not be dunked over. A separation. Not between himself and basketball. Between himself and his need for basketball to tell him who he was. For the first time in his career, Michael Jordan played not to prove. He played because he chose to, and that distinction is what separated the Michael Jordan of 1991 from the Michael Jordan of 1996. 3 more championships, 3 more finals MVPs older, slower by the metrics, and yet, somehow, more. Teammates from that second three-peat have said it repeatedly. He was different, not softer, cleaner, like something had been resolved inside him that made everything outside clearer. Here is what no highlight reel will ever show you. The greatest thing Michael Jordan ever did was not the 1998 finals shot. It was not the flu game. It was not 63 points against the Celtics in the playoffs. The greatest thing Michael Jordan ever did happened with no cameras, no crowd, no scoreboard. He sat with the possibility, truly sat with it, that he might be nothing without the game. And he didn't run from it. He answered it. That is not a basketball story. That is a human story. And it is the story that makes every other Michael Jordan story possible. Because you cannot sustain greatness that is built entirely on fear. You cannot compete at the highest level forever if the thing driving you is the terror of being ordinary. Eventually, the fear runs out. Or you do. What replaced it in Michael Jordan, after the silence, after the baseball diamonds, after the grief and the questions no one else heard, was something quieter than rage, something more durable than hunger. Choice. We love Michael Jordan's greatness. We catalog it. We rank it. We debate it at dinner tables and in comment sections. But the part of Michael Jordan that should matter most to you is the part that happened in the dark, when no one was watching, when there was no basket to shoot at, when the question on the floor was not, can you hit the shot, but who are you if you miss? Michael Jordan almost gave up, not on basketball, on the version of himself that could only survive if he was winning. And when he came back, he was something the world had never quite seen before. Not just a champion, a man who knew exactly why he was playing. The greatest battles are never the ones anyone watches. If this story hit you differently than you expected, that's the point. Subscribe if you want more stories like this. Not just sports history, the psychology underneath it.